The Apache woman he chose to save, not control. The sun rose slowly over the vast Arizona plains, painting the sky with streaks of orange and gold. John, a local rancher, had already been awake for hours, as he always was. The ranch required constant care, and mornings were the busiest part of the day. He saddled his horse, Dusty, and rode out to inspect the fences and check on the cattle. The land was his responsibility, and he took pride in keeping everything in order. He loved the quiet of the morning, the soft sounds of the wind through the desert brush, and the distant cries of hawks circling overhead. Yet even in this calm, he always had an eye on the town nearby and the Apache reservation. Life there was complicated, and he had learned over the years to respect it without interfering unless it was absolutely necessary. On this particular morning, John noticed something unusual near the edge of the small road that ran along the reservation boundary. A woman was standing by the side, her small figure almost swallowed by the dry brush. She seemed tense, constantly looking around, as if she were waiting for someone, or hiding from someone. Her clothes were simple but neat, and her dark hair was pulled back in a braid. There was a quiet strength in her posture, but also a hint of fear in her eyes. John knew immediately that this was not just a casual walk. Something was wrong. He slowed Dusty to a gentle walk, keeping a respectful distance. John had always believed that approaching someone without knowing the situation could sometimes make things worse. Yet he couldn't ignore the feeling in his chest that told him this woman might need help. As he rode closer, he could see her flinch at the sound of a truck approaching from the main road. John's heart tightened. Rask. The look in her eyes was not just fear. It was awareness of danger. Someone had frightened her, or worse, was threatening her.
John decided to act cautiously. He spoke in a calm, friendly voice, careful not to startle her.
"Morning," he said. "Are you okay? Do you need any help?" The woman turned to look at him, her eyes narrowing slightly. There was skepticism in her gaze, and he could feel the caution radiating from her. She did not immediately answer, and that pause told him she had likely encountered people before who had tried to control her or tell her what to do. John knew better than to push.
He nodded slowly and gave her space.
"No worries if you don't want to talk,"
he said.
"Psh, I'll be around if you do." For a moment, she studied him silently, as if weighing his intentions. Then, almost imperceptibly, she relaxed a little. Her name was Maria, and John learned this later, but even in that first glance, he sensed her resilience. She was not someone who would easily rely on another person, and she had good reason to be wary. Life on the reservation could be harsh, and outsiders often misunderstood or underestimated the people who lived there. John dismounted Dusty and left the reins dangling loosely. He wanted to show that he was not a threat. Every step he took was slow and deliberate. He did not want to appear aggressive or overbearing. Maria shifted slightly, her hand brushing the edge of her braid, as if ready to defend herself if necessary. But he did not flinch. He understood that trust had to be earned, not demanded. "Look," he said gently, "I can't pretend to know what's happening, but if someone is bothering you or if you're in trouble, I can help. I don't want to control anything, I just want to make sure you're safe." That phrase, carefully chosen, seemed to have an effect. Maria blinked and hesitated, then took a small step closer. John realized that offering help without expecting anything in return was the only way to reach her. It was a delicate balance. He had seen too many people, especially women on the reservation, being told what to do or treated like they were incapable. Maria was clearly strong, and he did not want to undermine that. Before she could answer, the sound of the truck grew louder. Its engine roared as it came down the dusty road. John's instincts kicked in. He gently positioned himself between Maria and the approaching vehicle, signaling for her to step back. The truck slowed but did not stop immediately. He saw the driver's expression briefly, arrogant, dismissive, and it confirmed his fear that Maria was being threatened. Without making sudden moves, John spoke in a firm, calm voice.
Hey!
Breath. There's no need to cause trouble. Just move along. The driver scowled, but eventually sped up again, leaving dust in its wake. Maria exhaled slowly, and John could see the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. She had faced danger, and now she had a moment of relief. He offered her a small smile. Best.
It's okay now. You're safe for the moment.
Maria nodded, still silent. She seemed unsure whether to trust this stranger. John knew it would take time for her to feel truly safe, but he was determined to be patient. There was no rush. He respected her autonomy, knowing that every action he took now could either build trust or destroy it.
I'll walk with you for a bit,
he said, gesturing toward the small path leading back toward the reservation. Just until you're sure you're okay. Maria hesitated, then slowly began to walk. John matched her pace, careful not to crowd her. They walked in silence at first, listening to the wind rustle through the dry leaves and the distant calls of birds. Silence can be a language of trust, he thought. You don't always need words to show that you care. Base. As they walked, John noticed small things about her. The way her boots were worn but clean, the way she carried herself with quiet confidence, the subtle movements that suggested she was always alert. These were signs of someone who had learned to survive, someone who did not easily depend on others. He admired her resilience, but he kept that admiration to himself, knowing that verbal praise could be misinterpreted at this stage. But after a while, Maria spoke softly.
You don't have to follow me,
she said. I can handle myself. John nodded, understanding her point completely. I know, he said. I'm just here if you need me. No pressure. Psst. She glanced at him briefly, and he thought he saw the faintest hint of gratitude in her eyes. It was not trust yet, but it was a start. John felt a sense of relief, but also knew this was just the beginning. Real trust would take time and consistency. He could not force it, and he would not try. As they reached the edge of the reservation, Maria slowed.
Thank you, she said quietly. But I need to be careful.
There are people who think they can decide things for me.
John nodded. I understand, he said. Becked.
You're the one who decides. I'm just here to make sure no one tries to hurt you while you do.
She looked at him then, really looked, and for a brief moment the wall of caution seemed to lower just a little. I appreciate that, she said, her voice steady but sincere. John smiled, a small, reassuring smile. You don't have to say anything more, he said. Just remember, you're not alone if you don't want to be. With that, he stepped back, giving her space. Maria walked ahead, still cautious but moving with more confidence than before. John watched her go, feeling a quiet satisfaction. He had not saved her in the dramatic sense. He had not tried to control her or make decisions for her. He had simply been there ready to help, and that was sometimes the most powerful thing a person could do. The rest of the day passed with John returning to his routine, but he could not shake the thought of Maria. He wondered about the challenges she faced, the people who tried to dominate her, and the courage it must take to navigate life with strength and dignity. He resolved silently that if she ever needed him again, he would be there. But always as an ally, never as someone seeking to control her life. By evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, John sat on the porch of his small ranch house, looking out over the fields. Dusty grazed nearby, and the air was filled with the soft chirping of crickets.
He thought about Maria's quiet strength, her wary eyes, and the small but important victory of showing her that help could exist without control.
He knew this was just the first encounter. Life could bring more challenges for her, and it could bring tests for him as well. But for now, he felt that he had taken the first step in a story of respect, courage, and understanding. One that might grow into something meaningful, but only if it remained grounded in trust and equality.
And somewhere in the distance, under the fading light of the desert sky,
Maria walked with a little more assurance, carrying the knowledge that someone had seen her strength without trying to change it, had offered help without demanding anything, and had respected her right to make her own choices. It was a small act, but in a world that often overlooked such gestures, it mattered greatly. The days following their first encounter were quiet, but the memory of Maria stayed with John. Every time he worked on his ranch, whether repairing fences or checking on the cattle, he found himself thinking about the woman with wary eyes and quiet strength. There was something remarkable about the way she carried herself, someone who had faced danger before and learned to protect herself without losing her dignity. John admired that strength silently. He knew the path to earning her trust would be slow, and he was willing to wait. It was late afternoon when he saw her again. This time, she was near the small creek that ran just beyond the reservation. She seemed absorbed in her task, collecting water perhaps, or tending to something nearby. Her hands moved skillfully, and there was a rhythm to her actions that showed experience. John stayed back at first, observing quietly from a distance, but desperate. He wanted to respect her space, yet he also wanted to ensure she was safe.
After a moment, he called out gently, "Maria!"
It's John. I hope I'm not disturbing you, Bay. She froze for a second, then slowly turned. Her eyes narrowed, as if calculating whether his presence posed any threat. She did not speak immediately, and John understood this hesitation. Trust was earned in small steps, not in grand gestures. I'm just checking to make sure everything's all right, he said calmly. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Maria studied him for a moment longer. Then she gave a small nod. I appreciate it, she said quietly. But I don't need anyone's help right now, John nodded. I understand. Just know I'm around if you ever change your mind. She gave him a brief, faint smile, a small but significant sign that the wall between them had shifted slightly. John took that as encouragement. Even the smallest acknowledgement could be the start of trust. Fast. Days turned into weeks, and their encounters became more frequent, though always brief. John would see Maria while riding near the reservation or at the edge of town. Sometimes she would nod in greeting. Sometimes she would continue her tasks without acknowledging him. But slowly, the silence between them became less tense, less guarded. He never forced conversation. He never imposed. He simply showed that he could be present without expecting anything in return. One afternoon, John noticed something unusual. Maria seemed more hurried than usual, glancing around nervously and moving as though she were being watched. His instincts immediately kicked in. Something was wrong. He dismounted Dusty and approached cautiously.
Maria, he called softly, careful not to startle her.
Are you okay? She hesitated, then shook her head. They're people. People who think they can tell me what to do, she said, her voice low and tense. I
need to get somewhere safe.
John nodded. He could see the urgency in her eyes, but he also saw the strength. She was not helpless. Far from it. But the situation was more than she could handle alone. I'll walk with you, he said. No one will bother you while I'm around. She paused, unsure, then slowly began walking, John keeping a respectful distance. The path was rocky, winding through sparse trees and brush. As they moved, Maria glanced at him. You don't try to control me, she said, almost as if confirming a fact she needed to believe. John smiled slightly. No, he said. I'm not here to control anything. I just want to make sure you're safe. That's all. That seemed to satisfy her. She relaxed just a little, and John could see the tension in her shoulders easing. He realized that sometimes the greatest gift one person could offer another was the freedom to be in control of their own life, while still having someone nearby to protect them if needed. They walked in silence for a while, the only sounds being the crunch of gravel underfoot and the distant calls of birds. The quiet allowed them both to observe and understand each other without words. John noticed the careful way Maria navigated the rocky terrain, her eyes always alert, her movements precise. He admired her skills without saying so. Some things, he knew, were better left unspoken at this stage. Eventually they reached a small clearing where the sunlight fell warmly on the ground. Maria stopped and turned to him. Why do you help me? She asked quietly. You don't owe me anything, John thought carefully before answering. 'Cause it's the right thing to do, he said simply. Everyone deserves to feel safe. No one should have to face fear alone. She studied him for a long moment, as if weighing his words. Then she nodded slowly. I think I understand, she said.
Over the next few days, John continued to show his support in small ways.
He helped repair a broken fence near her property when he noticed it might pose a danger to her livestock. He offered supplies when she was running low, always leaving them where she could take them without feeling obligated. Each act was quiet, deliberate, and without expectation. Maria began to notice that John's help came with no strings attached. It was different from other people who often wanted something in return: control, thanks, or influence. One evening, a sudden summer storm rolled in. The sky darkened, and the wind picked up, sending dust swirling across the plains. John saw Maria struggling to secure a small shelter for her animals. He rode quickly toward her, dusty, moving through the wind and rain with practiced ease. Maria! Do you need a hand? He shouted over the roar of the storm. She looked up, surprised but relieved to see him. Yes, she called back. It's too much alone. Together they worked quickly, securing the shelter against the wind and rain. John noticed how competent she was. Our hands moved with precision and care. He followed her lead, helping where needed, but never taking over. Every time she gave instructions, he listened carefully. It was a collaboration, not a takeover. By the time the storm passed, both were soaked and tired. They stood for a moment, catching their breath and watching the last streaks of rain fall across the plains.
Maria gave him a small smile. You didn't try to control anything, she said. You just helped. John nodded. Exactly, he said. Despection. You're strong, Maria. I just want to make sure nothing stops you from using that strength. That moment,
simple as it seemed, changed the dynamic between them. Bets. Maria's trust in John grew, not because he had saved her dramatically, but because he had respected her decisions and her independence. She realized he was an ally, not a master.
In the weeks that followed, they continued their cautious friendship. John learned more about Maria's life, her responsibilities, and the challenges she faced.
Despair. He listened when she spoke and remained silent when she did not. His presence became a quiet reassurance, a steadying force in a world that often tried to diminish her. Bay. Yet, despite this growing trust, John sensed that there were still dangers lurking. People who did not understand respect, who sought control, could appear at any moment. Maria was aware of this too, and she never let her guard down completely. Their partnership for now was based on mutual respect, vigilance, and understanding.
A fragile but important foundation.
One afternoon, as the sun began to set and the sky turned shades of pink and purple, Maria spoke of her past. She told John about challenges she had faced, times when people had tried to make decisions for her, and moments when she had had to rely only on her own strength. Her voice was steady, but there was a hint of pain in her eyes. John listened without interruption, nodding gently. He did not offer advice or pity. He simply acknowledged her experiences, letting her know he understood without judgment. That, more than anything, seemed to strengthen the trust between them. Maria realized that John was not just physically present, he was emotionally attentive as well, someone who could witness her struggles without attempting to rewrite them. As night fell, they parted ways, each returning to their own space. John rode back to his ranch, thinking about the day's events. He understood that helping someone like Maria was not about control or heroics. It was about presence, patience, and respect. True help, he reflected, did not come from forcing outcomes. It came from walking alongside someone, letting them lead, and being ready to support when needed. Maria, meanwhile, returned home with a quiet sense of relief. For the first time in a long while, she felt that someone had seen her strength without trying to change it. She felt respected, understood, and safe in a way that was rare. John had not saved her from her life. He had only ensured that she could navigate it with support when necessary. That distinction mattered greatly to her. And so, their bond deepened in small, meaningful ways. Each act of quiet assistance, each respectful conversation, and each shared moment of vigilance strengthened the foundation of trust between them. But they were two people from different worlds, learning to respect and support one another without overstepping boundaries. It was not dramatic, it was not flashy, but it was real! And in that reality, both found something precious. The understanding that true care does not control. It supports, protects, and honors autonomy. As the desert night settled in, with stars glittering overhead and a soft breeze rustling the dry leaves, John and Maria moved through their days with a new awareness of each other. Danger might still exist beyond the horizon, but for now they had found a way to navigate life together, side by side, with respect, courage, and trust. The weeks that followed brought a quiet routine for John and Maria. Their encounters, though still cautious, had grown in trust. They shared moments that were simple but meaningful. A nod across the field, a small wave, even brief conversations about chores or the weather. John never imposed, never tried to control Maria's decisions, and Maria, in turn, began to see him as someone reliable, someone who respected her independence. Yet, even in the calm, John could sense the tension that lingered beneath the surface. He had noticed her glances at certain houses in the town, the way she stiffened when a truck passed too closely, the careful attention she paid to people who approached her. It was a world that could be unpredictable and sometimes threatening. John understood that life was not always safe, even for someone as strong and capable as Maria. One afternoon, John was tending to the fences near the southern edge of his ranch when he saw Maria in the distance. She was moving quickly, glancing behind her as if someone were following. His stomach tightened. Instinct told him that this was no ordinary day. He saddled Dusty swiftly and rode toward her, his mind focused entirely on the woman who had gradually come to occupy a special place in his thoughts. Maria, he called, keeping his voice calm but loud enough to reach her. She turned, eyes wide, a mix of relief and fear crossing her face.
John, thank goodness, she said. Her voice trembled slightly, and John could see the tension in her posture.
She was being followed. John approached carefully, keeping a safe distance at first to avoid startling her. It's okay, he said. You're safe now. Who's following you? Maria shook her head. I don't know. I felt it. I've learned to trust my instincts. He nodded, understanding. But Maria's life on the reservation had taught her to read danger before it fully arrived. It was a skill born from necessity, and John respected it deeply. Let's move to a safer spot, he suggested. Somewhere open where you can see everything around you. Maria agreed, and they walked together toward a small clearing, the brush thinning so that they had clear sight in all directions. John stayed close but never stepped ahead of her, allowing her to lead the way. He knew that control was not the answer. Support was. Once they reached the clearing, Maria paused and looked around. Breaths. They're still out there, she said quietly, more to herself than to John. I can feel it. John glanced around and saw nothing immediately threatening, but he trusted her instincts. We'll stay here for now, he said. No one will surprise you while I'm with you. They waited, tense and alert, the silence of the desert stretching around them. Hours seemed to pass slowly, each rustle of wind or shift of sand making Maria flinch slightly. John remained patient, never urging her to relax, simply standing with her as a steady presence. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, a shadow moved in the distance, a figure approaching cautiously. John could see that it was a man, and his posture suggested that he was looking for someone. John instinctively moved a step closer to Maria, though still letting her take the lead. He could feel her hand brushing against his arm, not for support, but as a sign that she was aware of him and accepted his presence. The man stopped several yards away, eyeing them both. John's heart pounded, but he maintained a calm expression. He knew that sudden movement could escalate the situation.
Maria, however, stepped forward slightly, meeting the man's gaze with quiet authority.
You're not welcome here, she said, her voice steady. Leave. The man hesitated, clearly surprised by her courage. John admired the way she stood her ground without being aggressive, without giving the man any excuse to escalate. After a tense moment, the figure slowly backed away, disappearing into the brush. Maria exhaled deeply, the tension in her body easing just slightly. They won't come back, she said, though her tone carried a note of uncertainty. John nodded. You handled that perfectly, he said. You were calm, in control, and brave. Maria gave him a small, almost shy smile. I couldn't have done it without knowing you were here, she admitted. But thank you for not taking over. That makes a difference. Professing. John's chest warmed with a quiet satisfaction. That was exactly the balance he had hoped to achieve, support without control. You're stronger than you realize, he said softly. I'm just here to remind you of it, not to change it. As night fell, they decided to walk back toward the reservation, staying on the main path this time for safety. The stars emerged overhead, and the desert seemed to hold its breath. They moved slowly, each step deliberate, their awareness heightened by the day's events. On the way, Maria began to speak, her voice thoughtful. I've had people try to control me before, she said quietly. Friends, family, even strangers. They all thought they knew what was best for me. It never worked. It made everything harder. Despair. John listened attentively, giving her the space to express herself fully. I understand, he said. That's why I never want to be that person. You make your own choices, Maria. Bye. I just make sure you're safe while you do. Her eyes met his, and for the first time John saw something deeper. A sense of relief, perhaps even hope.
It's rare, she admitted. Someone who doesn't want to control me.
It's rare to find that. They walked in silence for a while after that, the trust between them growing silently. Each had seen a glimpse of the other's character under pressure, and both had found respect and admiration there. Maria knew she could rely on John without fearing that he would try to dominate or interfere. John knew that Maria was capable, courageous, and independent, and that his role was to support, not direct. Just as they were nearing the edge of the reservation, a sudden noise made them both freeze, a sound too deliberate to be natural. John moved instinctively to position himself slightly in front of Maria, but again he allowed her to take the lead.
Stay close to me, she whispered, her voice firm.
We'll handle it together. The next few minutes were tense. They spotted the same figure from earlier, moving more deliberately this time, clearly looking to confront Maria. John kept his tone calm but firm. We don't want any trouble, he said, addressing the man. Please, leave. Maria stepped forward beside him, her presence strong and unwavering. You need to go, she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had faced danger many times before. For a long moment the man hesitated, caught between aggression and retreat. Then, slowly, he backed away again, disappearing into the brush. Maria exhaled, the tension finally leaving her body. John placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You handled that brilliantly, he said. I'm proud of you. Maria looked at him, a genuine smile breaking through for the first time in weeks. I'm glad you were here, she said softly. I didn't have to face it alone, and yet I didn't feel like you were taking over. That matters more than I can explain. John felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. This was why he had been patient, why he had respected her space from the very beginning. True courage was not about fighting alone. It was about having the support to act with confidence when it mattered most. And for Maria, knowing that someone could be there without controlling her was transformative. By the time they reached the edge of the reservation, the stars had fully emerged, the desert cool and quiet around them. Maria paused at the path's edge, looking out at the vast landscape. Thank you, John, she said again. I feel safer knowing you're around, even if I don't need help every day. John nodded.
I'll always be around, he said simply.
Not to control, but to protect. That's all I ever want. Maria gave a final nod, a gesture of acknowledgement and trust, before continuing on her way. John watched her go, knowing that the foundation of their relationship had grown stronger today.
They had faced danger together, navigated fear without losing respect for one another, and proven that trust could be built without domination.
As John returned to his ranch, the desert calm around him, he reflected on the day's events. The challenges were far from over, and dangers could return at any moment. But he had learned something profound. Helping someone did not mean controlling them. Supporting someone did not require taking over. And facing challenges together could deepen respect, understanding, and trust in ways that nothing else could. For Maria, the day had been a reminder of her own strength and resilience. She had faced danger, asserted her independence, and yet allowed herself to accept help from someone she trusted. It was a delicate balance, but it had made all the difference. In John, she had found someone who saw her not as someone to protect or control, but as an equal, to respect and support. And as night settled over the desert with the wind rustling through the dry brush and the stars twinkling above, both of them carried a quiet understanding. Life could be unpredictable and dangerous, but trust and respect could create a bond that would withstand any challenge. Together, they had begun to build something rare and valuable, a partnership based on courage, autonomy, and mutual care. The sun was just beginning to rise over the desert, casting soft, pink, and gold light across the plains. John was already on his ranch, checking the fences and ensuring the cattle were safe. The early morning air was crisp and calm, but he sensed that today might not be as peaceful as it seemed. His thoughts kept returning to Maria, to the challenges she faced, and to the lingering presence of those who had threatened her before. He had seen her a few times in the past weeks, each encounter strengthening the bond of trust and respect between them. Maria had begun to rely on him not because she needed someone to make decisions for her, but because she knew he would stand by her side when danger arose. Today, though, he had a feeling deep in his gut that she might face a challenge that would test both her courage and their partnership. Later that morning, John received word from a neighbor that a group of men had been seen near the edge of the reservation. They had been asking questions, lingering in ways that suggested they were searching for someone. John's instincts immediately went to Maria. He knew he had to find her quickly to ensure her safety without taking control or undermining her independence. He mounted Dusty and rode toward the last place he had seen her, the wind stirring up dust around him. When he reached the small clearing near the creek, he saw Maria moving quickly, her eyes alert and her hands adjusting the straps of her bag. She had noticed him and gave a small nod, acknowledging his presence without needing him to say anything. "Are you okay?" John asked, keeping his tone calm. Maria shook her head slightly. Desperation. "I think they're looking for me," she said. "I don't know what they want, but I don't like it." Brass. "We'll handle this together," he said. "You lead, and I'll support. No one will take that choice from you." Maria's eyes softened, a mixture of relief and determination. Bet. She began to walk, and John followed, keeping a respectful distance but staying close enough to intervene if necessary. They moved through the brush with care, aware of the possibility of being watched. Every step was deliberate, every glance measured as they navigated the terrain with caution. Soon, the group of men appeared ahead, their figures silhouetted against the rising sun. They were clearly searching, but when they saw Maria, their expressions changed. They had clearly underestimated her. She did not panic. She stood tall, facing them with quiet confidence. John felt a surge of admiration. Maria had always been strong, but in this moment, her courage shone even brighter. He did not step forward to take charge. Instead, he stood beside her, a calm and steady presence, ready to support without dominating. The leader of the group stepped forward, speaking in a harsh tone. "We know you're here. You can't hide from us." Maria met his gaze evenly. "I'm not hiding," she said firmly. "I'm living my life. You have no right to tell me what to do." John noticed the way her words carried authority. She was not just defending herself, she was asserting her independence. He felt proud, not because he had helped, but because she had shown the world her strength. The leader hesitated, clearly thrown off by her confidence. John spoke then, his voice calm but unwavering. "There's no reason for trouble," he said. "She's not here to cause conflict, and neither am I. Leave her in peace." The men exchanged glances, uncertainty crossing their faces. Maria's presence combined with John's calm authority made it clear that they would not find the reaction they expected. After a tense moment, the leader nodded reluctantly. "Fine," he said. "But we'll be back." John and Maria watched as the group walked away, tension slowly leaving the clearing. Maria exhaled deeply, a mixture of relief and satisfaction in her expression. "They won't forget this," she said quietly, "but at least I can stand my ground. You've done more than that. You've shown them they can't control you, and you did it without losing yourself."
For the rest of the day, they moved cautiously, making sure the path back to the reservation was safe. Maria shared her thoughts as they walked, her voice steady but reflective.
"I've faced people like that before," she said. "People who think fear can make me follow their rules, but it doesn't. Not anymore." John listened, nodding. He could see how far she had come, how her courage had grown, not because someone forced her to be strong, but because she had chosen to be Rask, and in that choice, he had played a small part, not as a controller, but as a supporter, an ally who respected her autonomy. By evening, they reached the edge of the reservation. The sky was painted in shades of orange and violet, the desert calm once again settling over the land. Maria paused, looking out at the horizon. "I feel stronger," she said quietly. "Even when they come, I know I can face it." Rasp. "And it's good to know you're around too."
John nodded. "I'll always be around," he said simply.
"Desperate, not to control but to stand by your side when you need it." For a long moment they stood together in silence, the wind gently moving through the sparse trees. It was a moment of understanding, a shared recognition of trust, courage, and respect. Yes. They had faced danger, navigated fear, and come through it stronger, not because one had saved the other, but because they had faced it together. Maria finally spoke again. "It's rare," she said. "Rare to find someone who doesn't try to control, but just helps." I appreciate that more than I can say." John smiled gently. "It's simple," he said. "Everyone deserves to feel safe, and everyone deserves to be in control of their own life." "You've taught me that too." They shared a quiet laugh, the kind that comes from understanding and respect, not from obligation or expectation. It was a light moment after a day filled with tension, a reminder that even in the midst of challenges, there could be peace and connection. Over the next few weeks, life began to settle into a rhythm. The threats that had once hovered at the edges of Maria's life had diminished. She continued her daily tasks with confidence, and John remained nearby, offering support quietly, always respecting her choices. Their bond deepened, not in dramatic gestures, but in small acts of trust and understanding. Maria began to rely on John not because she needed him to lead, but because she knew he would be there when needed. And John, in turn, realized that true help was not about control. It was about respect, patience, and partnership. Each had grown stronger through their shared experiences, not by overpowering the other, but by standing together as equals. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains and the sky glowed with shades of pink and gold, Maria and John sat together by the creek. The water reflected the colors of the sky, and the desert air was warm and calm. They spoke quietly, sharing thoughts about the day, the challenges they had faced, and the lessons they had learned.
I've learned something important,
Maria said softly.
Strength isn't just about fighting. It's about knowing when to stand alone and when to let someone support you without taking over.
You showed me that. And I've learned that real courage isn't about saving someone. It's about respecting them, supporting them, and being there without trying to control their life.
They sat in silence for a moment, the connection between them unspoken but deeply understood.
It was a bond forged through trust, respect, and shared experiences, one that neither danger nor fear could easily break. As the night deepened, stars glittering overhead, Maria turned to John. "Thank you," she said simply, "for standing by me, for not trying to change me, for helping me when I needed it most." John smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. "Always," he said. "You've earned every bit of support. And I'll always respect your strength and independence."
For both of them, it was a moment of quiet triumph.
Not because they had defeated an enemy or achieved a dramatic victory, but because they had built something far more important, a bond rooted in trust, respect, and mutual care. They had faced fear together, and in doing so had discovered the true meaning of courage, not control, not domination, but partnership and understanding. As they parted that night, each returning to their own home, the desert around them seemed peaceful, almost sacred. The challenges of the past weeks had tested them, but they had emerged stronger, wiser, and more connected than before. Maria felt empowered, knowing that her life was her own and that she could face challenges with confidence. John felt fulfilled, knowing that he had supported someone without ever trying to take control. And in that shared understanding, both knew that their story was not about who saved whom. It was about mutual respect, courage, and the quiet power of being there for someone without taking over their life. In the end, the desert night held a calm promise. Whatever challenges might come in the future, John and Maria had forged a bond that would endure. One built on trust, understanding, and the simple but profound truth that true support honors the freedom and strength of the person it serves.